Today is October 19th, 2023. This is Luciana Spraker with the City of Savannah Municipal Archives. I am interviewing Patty Latham for the Proud Savannah History Project. We are conducting this interview at First City Pride Center. Thank you for joining me today. So we're going to start with a few background and general questions, and then we'll go into some specific things I want to talk to you about.
Okay.
So let's start with, what is your full name?
Patricia A. Latham.
Okay. Please tell us what pronouns you prefer to use.
She.
And what is your connection to the LGBTQ plus community?
In 83, 84, Lawrence Marley and I started the group First City Network.
Okay.
And it was largely to educate the people around here in Savannah about AIDS. And not just, people on the streets. We went to like the VA hospital, Memorial, a variety of places. Social workers. Lawrence was a social worker, so he knew a number of them. And we just started educating them. They started asking questions, and we do research and bring back answers and that kind of thing.
Okay. I'm going to get back to that in a little while and ask some more questions about First City Network.
Okay.
When and where were you born?
1953, Fort Leavenworth, Kansas.
Your father was in the military?
Yes, he was in the Navy. You know that ocean that's in the middle of Kansas.
When and why did you choose to move to Savannah?
When I grew up in Swainsboro, and as a kid, during the summer times, we'd come out here to Tybee Island and do a Catholic retreat. It was just really cool. And then as I became an adult, I went to school in Augusta and came out while I was there. And within a year, met some women who had come up to Augusta to the bar that I was hanging out in, and they were from Savannah. And we clicked, and so I would come down to Savannah pretty regular to hang out with them and get to know them, whatever. And so in 1982 or 83, I moved. I had graduated in 1980. I think it was 82 when I moved down here. That was one of the times. So I stayed here for a little while. I've moved back to Savannah 3 times in my life, and since 1982. Each one's a different story. And now I live up near Augusta again, but I keep coming to visit Savannah.
Okay.
But it was being gay that brought me down here. Yeah.
You mentioned that you came out in Augusta, which actually leads into my next 2 questions. How do you define coming out?
Well, I was 26 years old, totally denied I had attractions to women. And, I can look back in my little history before then. I was like, definitely, but I would have been the only lesbian in the world. That was what was in my mind. And then just things happened, and it was when I gave myself permission that it was okay to be who I am, it was like a rock coming off my shoulders. And it was like full steam ahead. Yeah.
October is when Savannah celebrates Pride, because June is very hot.
Too hot, yeah.
What does Pride mean to you when somebody says that?
It just means not being prideful, but just being okay, being able to be okay with who I am, and then hanging out with other people who have the same heartfelt thing about this is who I am, period. Nothing wrong with it. I didn't choose it. It just is. So I'm prideful of that kind of thing, but pride of just being, we're good.
Acceptance.
Good people. Acceptance, absolutely.
So we recently did another round of interviews in June for the Stonewall anniversary. And I'm wondering if there were any pivotal moments or major events that were turning points in your life. This could be something at the national level or something more local or personal that really kind of, changed things for you.
The little video I just gave you was was in 1987, March on Washington, the Gay March. And it was just amazing to see thousands and thousands and thousands of like-minded people. Yes, there was a fair amount here in Savannah, but nothing like being on Washington, D.C. and being able to be out in the mall and just seeing all the rainbows and all the people, all different kinds, and it just felt safe, very, very safe. Been there one other time after that, I think it was 92, when they had the quilt, the AIDS quilt displayed out there. I was actually, I can't remember, it had to have been 19, I want to say 81, 82, somewhere like that, where I was up in New York City just visiting a friend, and the case at the Supreme Court of Georgia, Hard Work versus Georgia, came through the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said it's going to go back to Georgia, it's a state's rights, whatever. But there was a big uproar. People didn't feel like that they were listened to, kind of thing. And so there was an impromptu gay march down the streets of New York, all the way down to where you could see the Statue of Liberty. Oh, I apologize. I'm going to turn it off. That was a big turning point, mainly because it was so massive in New York. It wasn't quite as colorful as the March on Washington, but it was still impactful. Yeah, that was 82, because then that March on Washington was 87. Yeah.
Okay. So we're coming up to the Pride Festival this weekend. Are there any local events, either now or in the past, that were, particularly meaningful to the LGBTQ plus community or yourself?
At least one time, if not more, the big event they have in Forsyth Park. I thought that was kind of cool that they finally got to go to a park.
What did they do during that event?
There was vendors and speakers and music and just a big festival.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was it one of the Pride years of the Pride Festival?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any local organizations, either in the past that no longer exist or now, that are meaningful that we need to talk about? And there's one, of course, we're going to talk about. Maybe I should say, besides First City Network, any other organizations that you want to sort of highlight?
Not that I was a part of. I think there was a group for a little while called ACT UP that formed.
Do you know what their mission was?
To get in people's faces about politics. And one of the things that I kind of think was cool with the beginning of First City Network was we weren't in people's faces. We just were educating people and then doing some community outreach things. And we wanted to do it with ease rather than in your face. And then, so there was a faction of people that wanted to do the ACT UP, which is, that's what they want to do. It's just a different sort of way of doing it.
Okay, so let's go back then to First City Network. You already talked about its beginnings and original mission. What was your role in First City Network over the years?
I was the treasurer for a while. I don't believe I was ever president or vice president. That was too daunting for me. But I definitely was supportive of whatever was going on. And just keeping track of monthly meetings, the socials, the different things we did in the community, cleanups for different, like the homeless shelter and variety of stuff. But as I said earlier, I was in and out of Savannah, so I was there with First City Network until 88, 89, and then I moved away and I came back. I think I was with them when I came back for just a short period of time, and by that time I think Pride was maybe around I don't remember the exact timeline.
Let's talk a little bit about Lawrence Marley, since he was so important to the beginnings of First City Network. Tell me how you knew him, what he was doing the rest of his life.
I think I met him at one of the clubs downtown one night, the Who or something, and just I instantly liked him and his spirit and stuff. And he could be forceful with other people and whatnot, but I liked him. I actually would. I was his house cleaner for a year or two. He hated doing that. I didn't mind. I didn't have a lot of jobs, so I appreciated that. And then we just got to talking, and then just before I left Augusta to move down here, they were starting a AIDS education group too. So, and that was only just for a few months before I moved. And so I thought, well, Lawrence and I both thought this would be a good thing to do in Savannah. And our very first meeting was 13 people, and 12 of them were men, and then it was me, the token lesbian. And it was probably 8 months before I could get some other women to come in and join. And at that time, when they started coming in, the newsletter, FCN's newsletter, formed, and Pat Gallagher and I kind of got that going, and then she was the queen of the newsletter for a number of years.
Why do you think it took so many months to get the lesbian community involved in First City Network with you?
Because it was men, and I think at one time there was a fraction between the two, just because they're different. And eventually it was like, okay, we all started coming together, and there was a mixture of people and stuff.
Did you see then a healing of that fracture that you had seen before?
I think it wasn't so much that it was a wound that needed to be healed. It was an unknown for this area, kind of thing. I don't know. It's a good question. I don't really know.
Do you think it had anything to do with AIDS being considered a gay man's disease?
Yeah, you're probably very right on that. Yeah, come to think of it, you're right. Mm-hmm.
So we talked about sort of the membership change. How, over the years, when you were directly involved, but also just being a resident in Savannah, how have you seen First Network change, either in its mission and purpose, or its leadership, or what kind of activities it sponsors?
I'm really not up on really what it's been doing the last several years, just because I've been gone. There's been such a turnover of people. This is 40 years. If you think about it, that's a long time. It's actually the oldest organization of gay people in the state of Georgia. And so when I come back into town and I see that it's still at least here, whether it's 2 people, 12 people, 50 people, that it's still going. And I mean, that's amazing to me. And I know in the late 90s or something, when Pride started, it was a whole nother group of people, and their, I guess, agenda was different. I wasn't around when, that was happening, so I'm not sure how it really started. But at least they still kind of work together in whatever level they do today. But I think it's community service mostly is what FCN is supposed to be doing when we originally wrote the bylaws and the mission statement, and to educate and do community service. So.
Okay. You've mentioned a little bit about the AIDS. We've talked about it a little bit, AIDS epidemic. Tell me about what you were witnessing here in Savannah in the 1980s when the AIDS epidemic.
A lot of death. I've know a good handful or more guys who had passed away, some as recently as 7 or 8 years ago, who had gotten AIDS years ago, and thank goodness the medication worked for them, but they're still dying from it. so, that was the biggest thing. So that's really what pushed us to educate more people, because there was all kind of rumors about it. And I guess I just wasn't afraid of it, like some people were. So.
Actually, before we left for city, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about network news. Why was that newsletter important? What was it providing?
Well, we didn't have the internet back then, so this was our way of connecting. Since I was the treasurer, I also did the advertising, so I was the one that went out to different businesses and stuff and tried to bring in the revenue to keep that newsletter going. But it was that was part of the education. If somebody was going to advertise in the newsletter, that means that whoever the owner is going to be knowledgeable of what we were doing, and hopefully they would spread the information as well. And then whenever the newsletter came out, then whoever was advertising, we got to bring some of the newsletters there, and then they disseminate them.
Yeah, and I guess if your business is in there advertising, people receiving the newsletter know that they're a safe business, supportive
Absolutely.
business.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about what Savannah was like for the lesbian community when you first started coming here. You were in Augusta. How did it compare to Augusta? How was it different? What about Savannah was either good or bad, or, for you as a young lesbian at that time?
There's only 1 or 2 times I felt unsafe. Kind of an immediate unsafe, like we were hanging out in the back of the gay and lesbian bar, and there was a truckload of 17, 18, 19-year-old boys come out, and they're trying to get out of their car to come after us, kind of thing. Well, we just go right back into the bar. But other than that, the community was just so small compared to now. And so a lot of people knew each other. In Augusta, I was brand new. It was the end of 1979 before I came out, so it was only a couple of years later that I moved away from there. And it was, the life of gay people were at the bars, especially in your 20s and 30s. The one good thing with FCN is the monthly potluck that they would have, and so people would gather at different people's houses, and which they still do today. And it's just nice to be in a group of people that are like-minded, and that feels safe.
So I was going to ask you about some specific spots where you felt safe. So you mentioned the Who. I think it was the Who. Tell me about some of those places that are not here anymore that we should maybe know about, and where you remember their locations being.
The Lucas Theater was a gay bar for a little while, and so we had the Who's Who, Lucas Theater, and then what's that other bar now? It's been so long, I'm older. I don't go to the bars too often, and it's still there. Near City Market.
Club One,
thank you. Thank you. And then there was a tiny little one on Lincoln Street. So they were all within walking distance. And
was the one on Lincoln Street called Faces?
Faces, that's it. Thank you. Yeah.
So where was the Who's Who located?
It was on Bay Street. Like when you're looking on Abercorn, there's the little golden building. It was just a couple of buildings now. The building itself is long gone. It's a hotel now.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't remember the years, when it was open and stuff. But in all of that, in the 1980s, we have to remember Lady Chablis. And she actually started her show in Augusta. And I remember going to see her at the bar that was there called Upside Down, or Inside Out. Inside Out, that's it. And so I remember seeing her there, and so we were an acquaintance. And then when she would come down into Savannah pretty regular, then we would say hey a little bit more often, kind of thing. So yeah, so that was a big thing.
Okay. In your opinion, what is the best thing or your favorite thing about Savannah's community?
That it's, over the years, that it's peacefully kind of expanded into acceptance by many people. It's grown, and it was comfortable. And yes, there was that act up group for a little bit, get in your face kind of thing, but overall, people are pretty accepting of the community, I believe. Individuals may have a little difficulty, but overall, I think they're, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, what are the biggest challenges facing the LGBTQ plus community today still?
Since I'm kind of new back into Georgia, I'm not sure of all the laws that might be passed, trying to be passed. In Texas, there definitely was crazy, stupid stuff.
And this question could also be maybe, nationally, just in general, what are the challenges that, you've seen things come a long way, but what are we still missing? What still needs to be done?
There's still people out there not accepting any kind of gay people, and especially trans people these days. It's like, oh my gosh. And all that is the fear of the unknown. Most of the time, I believe that people who are up in arms against trans people have never really met a trans person that they know of.
I was about to say, or that they know they did.
Yeah. So, and it's that trans people are even a smaller percentage of the human beings out there compared to the gay people, and even we're small compared to all the other people out there. And they just need to get to know us, kind of thing.
How do you feel about that umbrella? LGBTQIA plus community, kind of all these sort of unique communities being lumped together.
Well, I think it started out small and now has just gotten bigger. And
do you think it's a positive for everybody to be lumped together, or maybe it's taking away from their individual identities?
I think it depends on what they're comfortable with. I mean, sometimes we don't want to be out there alone. And if it means, feeling something under that umbrella to feel safe, that's a good thing.
Do you have an LGBTQ plus community member or ally that you would like to lift up and tell us about?
You mean a person that's been a part of this community, or
that you think we should record in history? We shouldn't forget about their contributions or what they've done, or...
Pat Gallagher.
We'll talk a little bit about Pat.
She was the newsletter person, and that was a lot of work back in the old printing days. And so she spent a lot of her time doing that. But yeah, she contributed quite a bit. And the other person is Mark Krieger. He's like a little ever-ready battery that never stops. I'm hoping I know that I'm going to be seeing him November 4th, because we're going over to see Wilson Huff's, or help her. She's definitely older than me, and she's had some health problems, and he set it up to go and fix her yard up and clean her house and things like that. And I'm just so proud of him for doing that. And hopefully we have some volunteers that come in to get it done faster than just a few people.
Yeah. So, that's the stuff he's doing now. What are some other things that Mark has done over the years that you think are important?
Well, his favorite thing is landscaping, so he did a lot of cleanups for like hospice, the homeless shelter, various other places I'm not sure of, but yeah, that's one of his big things that he did, and just keeping going and reaching out and talking and whatnot. I have not seen him in a while, and but he was one of the 13 in the very beginning.
Can you remember any of the other names of the other men that were there?
No, actually. I think John Tomat, but I think he's in Columbia, South Carolina. I don't, and I had dropped off the original list one time with FCN people. I don't know what happened to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can ask Mark that question too, since he
Yeah.
was there as well.
Mm-hmm. He would because he's been here constantly, and not me going back and forth. You know, just every few years I move out and come back. He definitely would know more.
Which is interesting because Savannah keeps drawing you back.
I know. I don't know what it is.
You mentioned Wilson Huff. She's come up a lot. Can you talk a little bit about her?
She was part of FCN. I don't know when she came into the picture. It was a couple, 3 years after. And she was on the board, and she was educated as a lawyer, so she was pretty smart in that direction. Just remembered the mayor, one year, she got the mayor to be a part of FCN. Susan Weiner.
Oh, okay. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. So there was some declaration like this is, Gay and Lesbian Day kind of thing, but Susan Weiner was a part of that. And I think Wilson kind of got that going.
Okay. Any other early female leaders living or who have passed away that we should know about?
Not that I can recall, and it'd be a shame if I forgot somebody.
Well, if you think of anybody, you can
Yeah.
always email me their names.
Okay.
And so I come now to my last question, which is there anything else you would like to share with us about Savannah's LGBTQ plus community or its history? Open field.
I couldn't put my hand on it, but I know there was a video that Lawrence, myself, and a woman named Jan Riley who lives in Atlanta. She was a musician, but she lived down in Savannah for a little while. Were interviewed by one of the TV stations. And what I remember, because you talked earlier about young people still not really coming out and stuff like that, is that we kind of had our face darkened because we were worried. But you could still tell who I was. I had really big hair, you could tell.
So this would be in the 1980s?
Definitely 1980s. But it used to be on a VHS tape. I don't know if I still have that or not.
Okay.
But, and I don't remember which TV station that did that, and that was kind of interesting, and you made me think back that we wanted our face dark, and I think Lawrence said, nope, my face is going to get out there.
So his face was clear, and
Mm-hmm,
you two had your faces blurred.
Yeah, because I was worried about my job, and it turns out that my employers at the time or something, they already kind of knew. They weren't worried.
Okay, anything else?
Not that I can think of in the way of the history.
Well, so maybe I'll ask you a final question, maybe for young people. What would you say to a young person now, or wish somebody had said to you that might have made things easier or accepting yourself easier?
Go with what feels right and get to know an older person, older gay person. Get to know the history, get to know what's, what shoulders they're standing on, kind of thing, and don't take things for granted. That would be the best thing.
Yeah, I think you're seeing that a lot with the sort of national movements that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting that, you know, I didn't come out to the end of 1979, and that was 10 years after Stonewall. I was not even in the area. I graduated high school in Hawaii, away from this kind of news, and no concept of, you know, being gay and stuff like that. Even though I'd heard the word lesbian, I was like, no. Matter of fact, my grandmother and my parents were pushing me. You need to join the military. You need to join the military. And I'm like, oh no, there's lesbians in there. It's like, I'm not gonna do that. I should have. But let's see. I don't know. Just, I would say, get to know the history and older people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on. So I want to thank you for coming out and speaking with us for the Proud Savannah project.
There was something else I was thinking. A bunch of things go through my head as we're having conversations. Like, okay,
It's
put it
hard to
aside,
get back
Patty.
to it.
Come back to it. I forgot what it was. But I'm looking forward to the parade tomorrow night. And where did they set up their vendors?
Ellis Square.
Ellis Square.
Yes,
Okay.
City Market area.
Okay.
Which
All
I think is nice. You mentioned how nice it was when the festival was held in Forsyth Park, having it in this large public park. I think having it in one of the most prominent public squares, you know, is, you know, kind of on the same level of.
They had it around Johnson Square one year too. I'm not mistaken. But Ellis is good. It's right near City Market and stuff. So, yeah. It's been a long history here in this 40 years for me anyway. A little longer for other people, but yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Sure.